It's time. For the majority of these people in the classroom, these words might not mean much to you, but for the select few that know, you'll know that today we'll be talking about the UFC, as those are the famous words of Bruce Buffer before every contest. Demetrius Johnson is one of the greatest fighters to ever step into the octagon, and from being one of the greatest to being also one of my favorite fighters, today we'll jump along with him and have our own training camp to learn about the brief history of the UFC, the brief history of Demetrius Johnson himself, and the legacy that he leaves behind. Hopping straight into the history of the sport, the UFC was founded in 1993 as a way of a tournament to find the best fighting style available for everyone. From Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to Muay Thai or just wrestling and boxing, there's plenty to pick from. Originally having two weight classes, being above 200 pounds as a heavyweight or under 200 pounds as a lightweight, the UFC was pretty barbaric in the beginning. Afterward, and after a short time, it exploded into 8 new weight classes, where today we're going to be focusing on the flyweight, which has its limit at 125 pounds. Demetrius Johnson was born in Kentucky in 1986 and moved to Washington, where he grew up. Living with his mother and in Washington in a single-parent household, there was plenty of struggle for him growing up. His mother was deaf, which according to an interview with the Jakarta Post, he did not realize until she eventually told him to himself, even though he figured it was weird that he had to pound on the floor to get her attention sometimes. Another struggle that Demetrius Johnson faced when he was growing up was an abusive stepfather his mother married into. In high school, Demetrius Johnson was a star athlete, wrestling, running cross country, and running track, all of which would showcase his determination and athleticism, which helped him build an MMA career. Wrestling specifically was DJ's best sport, where he had a record of 161-11 and was able to stand on 2 Washington State Championship podiums. Beginning his career as a fighter in the amateur leagues in the Alaska Fighting Championship in 2006, he fought in the bantamweight division where he was a little bit out of weight, being bantamweight's limit set at 135. In this league, he set a 9-0 record before eventually being picked up by the UFC, where he fought again at bantamweight until 2012 when the UFC adopted the flyweight division. Now that we know where DJ fits into the sport, we can begin to grapple with his legacy that he left behind. His first title fight in the UFC was against Joseph Benavidez, which eventually won, bringing his record to 19-2-1. After this happened, he had 11 title defenses, the most of any person in the UFC. And to put this into perspective, each training camp for a fight is about 7 weeks on average, according to fightcamp.com. This meant that DJ alone, for defending his belt, spent 77 weeks training, not mentioning what he did to lead up or do anything before. DJ built his legacy and built his popularity up in the sport by winning all these fights and eventually leaving the UFC to go to the ONE MMA Championship, where he once again won the flyweight belt and had another 5 title defenses. Building his legacy was something that he chose to do a different way, as some other fighters chose to do it by press conferences, ego, and banter. Today, after we've jumped into the fighting ring in the octagon and learned about what a training camp might look like, we begin to step with DJ in the way he floats across the canvas and his smooth and powerful striking, where we learn about the history of the UFC, the history of DJ, and how his legacy and impact on the sport is remembered. And even though he may have never rose to the sports of those like John Jones and Ronda Rousey, anybody who's had their time to see DJ fight surely knows that his name deserves to be along in those conversations. Thank you. 3.